If it's Monday, officials warn that extreme and dangerous weather conditions could further escalate the wildfire crisis in Los Angeles in what could be one of the most expensive and destructive natural disasters in U.S. history. Plus, Washington braces for a week of contentious confirmation hearings for President-elect Trump's top cabinet picks, starting with a make-or-break moment for Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick to lead the Pentagon. And President Biden says America is stronger and our rivals are weaker in his final foreign policy address as negotiators appear to make new progress in the rush to secure a Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal. Hi there and welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Ryan Nobles on a pivotal day in the efforts to contain the deadly and devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. Right now, 13 million Californians are under fire alerts through Wednesday, with those powerful Santa Ana winds expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour. The National Weather Service just issued this dire warning. Particularly dangerous situation red flag warnings are for the extreme of the extreme fire weather scenarios. In other words, this setup is about as bad as it gets. 3 major wildfires are still burning. The largest, the Palisades fire, is just 14% contained. The Eaton fire is just 1/3 contained. And the death toll continues to rise, now at 24, with more than 12,000 structures that have been destroyed and 40,000 acres burned. That's an area roughly the same size as our nation's capital. Now, despite officials saying that they've made significant progress towards containing the Palisades fire, LA's fire chief today warned residents should not become complacent.
We are not in the clear as of yet, and we must not let our guard down. As we have right now extreme fire behavior, and we need to make sure that the community is staying updated with the most information, updated information as well.
More than 90,000 people are under evacuation orders right now. Nearly 90,000 more are under evacuation warnings, meaning they should be prepared to evacuate at a moment's notice.
If you get an alert on your telephone for an evacuation warning, leave then. Don't wait for the order, because we know from experience that if you wait for the order, you might get caught up in the congestion that you referenced.
And fire is not the only concern right now. Los Angeles County has issued a public health emergency, warning that smoke and particulate matter in the air could pose long-term threats, especially to residents with underlying health conditions. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's team is engaged in conversations about the president-elect visiting Los Angeles. That's according to 2 sources familiar with those talks. It comes as California Governor Gavin Newsom is calling on Mr. Trump to see the devastation for himself. In an exclusive interview on Meet the Press, the governor told NBC's Jacob Soboroff that he expects this to be the worst natural disaster in U.S. history.
In your opinion, is this or will it be the worst natural disaster in the history of the United States?
I think it will be in terms of just the costs associated with it. In terms of the scale and scope, we've got to be thinking 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years ahead. At the same time, we're focusing on the immediacy, which is life safety and property. And so that's exactly what we're doing with disaster assistance, making sure people are getting their applications, addressing the issue of fraud. And that's an issue we've got to address, price gouging. We're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team of looking and reimagining LA 2.0. And we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
NBC's Liz Kurtz joins me from Pacific Palisades. Also with me is NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Liz, you and your fellow correspondents out there have just done such incredible work covering this devastation. For those of us that aren't there, are watching these pictures on TV, describe for us what the scene is like right now in Pacific Palisades.
Hey, Ryan. Well, thank you. I mean, there's a little bit of good news right now, if you can say that, which is just that the winds have died down today. And so that means it's going to be critical today, the next few hours, for firefighters to continue to try to get a hold of these fires before this new wind event comes through. This is, as you mentioned, a PDS red flag warning, a very rare warning that we get for these extraordinarily strong winds. It's the same warning we got a week ago when this fire was ignited. Tomorrow will mark 1 week since this fire here ignited. And I'm at a home, one of the thousands of homes destroyed from these fires, and right on Sunset Boulevard. If I just go, half a mile down from here, you can see the beautiful, pristine Pacific coast. And this is where I myself was on Tuesday a week ago, trying to get into this fire where there was gridlock traffic. And just about a mile from here is where you'll see charred out cars of those cars that were abandoned by folks trying to get out. So there's still a lot of remnants of that day, but right now it's actually eerily quiet here. They have really locked it down to make sure nobody can get in and out. The National Guard has multiple roadblocks along with LAPD and firefighters, and that is because of this concern and issue with looters. They've arrested more than 40 people in this area who were not supposed to be in the evacuation area here, Ryan.
And you mentioned those strong winds. What are officials doing to prepare for the next 2 days as this appears to be incoming?
Yeah, well, officials are saying that they are better prepared this time than a week ago. That's what they're saying. They say that they have pre-positioned firefighters to some of the areas that seem to be like they could be the worst, strongest wind areas, particularly up in Ventura County. They're also going to have extra patrols in some of these areas where the fire is already burning. And they're also just really putting the word out there, and people and the public are really paying attention since we saw the damage a week ago. People who are in these regions where we're going to see these high winds are being told to be prepared, pack a bag, pack your car. Just know that this is a real situation. Another fire could ignite, and you might need to get out at a moment's notice.
And Los Angeles County's declared a public health emergency due to concerns about air quality. Talk to us about what this emergency entails.
Yeah, that's impacting millions of people across Southern California right now. I know people who live in LA, they're not in some of the fire areas, and they've gotten out of town simply because of the smoke and the air quality. We know that air quality and the smoke is very dangerous for people. And so people are being told to stay inside if you can, particularly people with underlying health conditions. Just limit how much time you're spending outside right now. And then, of course, we're seeing people everywhere wearing their N95 masks, which are critical right now, Brian.
Okay. Liz, you and your team, please stay safe. Thank you for the excellent reporting under very difficult conditions. I want to bring in Bill Cairns now, our meteorologist, to talk about what the forecast looks like. You heard Liz outline it, Bill, but talk to us. Just how concerning are these new strong winds?
Let's put it this way, Ryan. We've had 4 of these, what we call particularly dangerous situations in the last 2-3 months in Southern California. And every time, the other 3 times, we had structures burned. Of course, we had last week, but even in November, December, we had similar situations and we had structures burned. So that's the concern. That's why the National Weather Service is putting out those dire warnings. And the areas of greatest concern are in these hash lines. So downtown LA is not in this. This is a different event than last week. Last week, the winds were out of the north. They were coming down off the mountains and going right through downtown LA, 80 to 100 miles per hour. That's extremely rare. This is what we call a typical Santa Ana wind event. The winds right now are mostly going from the east to the west in this general direction, and those are the areas of concern as that air comes down those mountains. And even right now in out west, we've already got wind gusts of 44. So Ryan, it's important. If you saw where Liz was located, winds are only like 3 miles per hour, but you only travel about an hour north up in the mountains. We're already getting gusts from 40 to 50 miles per hour. So this is not a huge issue, this wind event, where we have the current fires. It's more if new fires form.
And how long are they expected to last? Is there any relief in sight?
Yeah, so let's give you the timeline on this. So this is right now. So let's fast forward. We're going through the night. When you start to see the pink, that's when we get up to 60 miles per hour. So by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, we have numerous mountain ranges here in the 50 to about 70 mile per hour range. That's the concern. When you get that high, they're not going to be able to fight. So if a new fire forms in this region with these high winds, 50 to 70 miles per hour, the helicopters, the super scoopers, the fixed-wing aircraft, the fire retardant, they can't even drop accurately with winds this gusty. And sometimes because of mountain waves and the air turbulence, they can't even fly in us. So they may be grounded. So, Ryan, that's the concern. We do think the winds will die off a little bit Tuesday afternoon, but here's 6 p.m. tomorrow, a little bit lower. But then they're going to pop back up Wednesday morning. And it looks like by about Wednesday afternoon to Wednesday night, Ryan, then they finally die off. We get an onshore flow, which is kind of more humidity and cooler. That's going to last from Thursday through the weekend. So we just have to get through the next 48 hours.
And then, obviously, rain would be a huge help. Is there any rain in the forecast at all?
Yeah, rain would be like the biggest, blessing ever. Hasn't rained in about 8 months, and let's go take a look at the forecast. So here's actually the rainfall, significant rainfall since October 1st. In L.A., they've gotten 0.16. I mean, that's like, you turn your faucet on for a tenth of a second. That's 3% of normal. And here's the rainfall forecast over the next 7 days for Southern California. Absolutely nothing. And even going out towards, what we call the 6 to 10 day outlook, temperatures aren't that warm, but we're still going to be drier than average for the entire West. So, Ryan, this should easily go through the end of January. Anytime it's super windy, we're going to have this really dangerous conditions.
Okay, Bill Cairns, thank you for outlining all of that for us. Let's now go to Chris Harvey, who's a spokesperson for CAL FIRE, part of the team on the front lines of what is happening there. Talk to us, Chris, about the next 48 hours in terms of your efforts to contain these fires. How difficult do you expect that it's going to get?
Sure. So as some of your correspondents have already pointed out, this PDS red flag warning is unfortunately, these are incidents where we do have ignitions. Those were the conditions, obviously, last week when this fire that I'm on, the Palisades fire, started. So everybody is really, really paying attention to the weather. I will say this. I've been up in the neighborhoods that have been affected. I was up Mandeville Canyon and over in Brentwood. We do have a lot of crews that are already pre-positioned. There's a lot of fire apparatus on the ground. There are a lot of hand crews on the ground. I do know, I saw a lot of engines yesterday and last night. They're already hooked to hydrants. They have charged hose lines on the ground ready to go. I also know that LA Power and Water was up in that area yesterday. They put some additional supplemental diesel-powered pumps they're being kind of plugged into the system to boost water pressure, or to also, in emergencies, in case a pump goes down, they'll have a portable pump ready to go. So I do know that crews are ready and willing to, to attack this fire when it comes. And then just briefly about the aerial assets, as was mentioned, we have a lot of aerial assets on this fire. We just hope the winds are going to be low enough that those aerial assets can fly and drop water and retardant in case they're needed.
And maybe expand on that a little bit. Is there a scenario where you'd have to suspend those aerial operations if the winds get to be too strong?
Unfortunately, yes. We've already seen that here on the Palisades fire. We have had wind gusts and wind strength that were so strong that it did ground the aerial operations. And obviously in that situation, it's just up to the boots on the ground, the fire engines and the fire.
So I'm sure you're going to tell me you're concerned about both, but right now, are you more concerned about the spread of the fires that are currently burning, or are you worried about new fires that could be sparked by the new strong winds?
Well, again, as was pointed out earlier, we got a little bit of a break the last 24 to 36 hours. We were able to get lower wind speeds. Unfortunately, the relative humidity, low humidities, but lower wind speeds allowed those crews both on the ground and the air to really get a real knockdown on the major fire. In the last 36 hours, you can see over the fire now, there's no really large column of smoke. It's really the crews are going and just trying to put out hot spots and smokers. And that's the concern, that the winds could grow and pick up some of those embers and spread fire. If that happens, that's obviously going to be very problematic.
So there's been a lot of talk about this large reservoir in the Pacific Palisades that was out of commission when the fire broke out last week. Would that reservoir have helped prevent this fire from becoming as devastating as it's been?
Well, I'm not in a position to speculate about that. That's definitely a question that would be better answered by LA Water and Power. I think it would be, I don't know how much time we have, but I'd just like to take a minute to talk about drone flights. I think the drone flights by private drone flyers on this incident that have caused firefighting aircraft to either have to be diverted or grounded is a significant story that's ongoing. That's something that we're really concerned about in the next couple of days. We really want to make sure the public understands that if you fly, we can't. I'm sure you're aware we had a very significant incident where one of the Super Scooper fixed wing aircraft hit a drone and had damage to the wing. That aircraft is now out of commission. And obviously that could have been much more catastrophic had there been more damage to the plane and it had crashed or something like that. So we really just want to make sure that people are not flying drones. That's a very much an area of concern for us now.
And is it something that is an ongoing problem, or do you think folks there have gotten the message, or do you still see a lot of drones up there that are not supposed to be?
I will say this, on the Palisades fire, the number I got last night was 48 drone incursions at this point, just on this incident alone. I wouldn't be surprised if that number has climbed since then. And, we are all aware of how available they are now. You can order a drone online and be flying it, the next day. And so I understand people's curiosities. I understand people want to play with their devices and get a good look at the fire. I can't overemphasize how important it is to get the message out that you cannot fly drones over these incidents.
And my last question for you, Chris, just talk to me about the morale of your firefighters. I just can't imagine how difficult this process has to be for them. I know that they get into this because of the service aspect of it, but how is the mental state of these guys that are on the front line trying to prevent this from becoming an even bigger tragedy?
Well, I don't want to sound too trite, but obviously when you get into this job, you understand the risks that you face, and you know when you're going to a large incident like this that you're going to be worked very hard and you're going to get very little sleep. I would expand what you're talking about to include law enforcement, the water and power, the people that are staffing the evacuation centers, and the evacuees themselves. I mean, everybody's worn out at this point after a week of little sleep and a lot of worry. And so I'm hoping that everyone that is currently affected by the situation and working here is, they're doing their very best.
Well, the rest of us are praying for you and the folks that are dealing with this. We can't imagine the scale of this devastation. Chris Harvey, thank you so much for your time. Please stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those watching right now, wondering how you can help the victims of the California wildfires, you can scan the QR code on your screen now to access a list of resources and organizations that have been vetted by NBC News. We'll have much more on the wildfire emergency later this hour, including an interview with the CEO and co-founder of the wildfire tracking app that has become a lifeline for many Los Angeles residents. Plus, Trump's cabinet picks brace for a wild week of confirmation hearings as the president-elect signals a shock and awe campaign of executive actions starting on day one. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. President-elect Trump says that he wants his team in place as quickly as possible once he's inaugurated, and that starts with getting key cabinet positions confirmed by the Senate. This week, many of those picks will begin their confirmation hearings. Some of them, like Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, are expected to have a smooth path to confirmation, while others are a little more controversial, including Trump's pick to lead the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, whose hearing tomorrow could be a make-or-break moment for his nomination. And joining me now is someone who I can now say is NBC News senior White House correspondent, Garrett Haake, who is still on Capitol Hill for us today. Garrett, congrats on the new post, but let me talk to you about Pete Hegseth first. He's going to answer questions from the Armed Services Committee tomorrow. We've learned that right now only 2 senators on that committee have seen his background check. That's the chair and the ranking member. How vital is that kind of information for lawmakers, particularly these Democrats who Hegseth has not even met with during his trips to Capitol Hill?
Well, thank you, Ryan. And it's going to be critical. Hegseth is someone who has had the rare effect of raising bipartisan questions about both his experience and his personal background, anecdotes of which have troubled both Democrats and Republicans alike. There was some hope, particularly on the Democratic side, that FBI background check would shed new light on some of the open questions about Hegseth, although, as you and I both know, that's been in the hands of at least the ranking member on the Democratic side since late last week. And if there's not a bombshell that's come out yet, I wonder if there will be one. Tonight, Democratic members of the committee are going to huddle together to kind of hash out some of their strategy for this hearing tomorrow. And although we're talking about Democrats, the audience here is going to be Republicans. The simple fact of the matter is, if all Republicans band together, any of these nominees, no matter how controversial, including Pete Hegseth, can be confirmed. And so whatever Democrats throw at Hegseth tomorrow, I think he will be reminded time and time again by his team that his audience are the skeptical Republicans. And if he can bring them along, he could be heading the Pentagon by this time next week.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it, Garrett? Because the Democratic strategy tomorrow is likely not going to be being convinced that they want to vote for him. It's going to be trying to convince maybe their skeptical Republican colleagues not to vote for him, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think the audience for every Democratic question is Joni Ernst, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and perhaps a handful of others, as if these Democrats will be saying, are you sure about this guy? I don't expect Pete Hegseth to get a single Democratic vote at this point, except for perhaps John Fetterman, whom he has met with and who's proven to be something of a wild card in the Democratic caucus. But this hearing tomorrow, perhaps more than any of the others, I think will be pivotal to just seeing exactly what Pete Hegseth is made of.
All right, let's talk now about the Trump transition. You obviously cover that very closely in your capacity now as senior White House correspondent. We heard Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, say on Meet the Press this weekend that the Trump team's not responded to their invitation to survey the damage there. Do you expect that Trump will eventually make that trip? And is he going to stand side by side with Gavin Newsom as he continues to attack the governor?
Eventually, yes, I do expect him to go. Now, I'm told that by multiple sources that this is an ongoing conversation about whether to accept the invitation and when to go. Obviously, with a week to go to Inauguration Day, it's a very difficult time to jam that in. And early in a presidential administration, it only gets more complicated, especially with the footprint that being the president as opposed to the president-elect would require. But look back over the campaign that Donald Trump just ran. He made it a point of pride to show up in East Palestine, Ohio, and to Georgia, North Carolina, many cases before the sitting president, for political purposes, to be sure. But that's the kind of way that he likes to run his shop, and his shop is about to be the White House. I think he likes, again, just from having covered him for a long time, the dynamic that kind of thing could bring, especially if he can, secure some wins from a serious Democratic opponent and someone who's been a thorn in his side in the past, and likely to be again in the person of Gavin Newsom, who now needs Donald Trump and the Republican majorities in both chambers to pass federal aid that he will badly need for the Golden State.
Good point. Garrett, thank you so much. Let's bring on our panel now to talk more about this. Betsy Woodruff Swan is a national correspondent at Politico. She's an NBC News contributor. Amisha Cross is a Democratic strategist and a former Obama campaign advisor. And Doug Heye, a Republican strategist and the former RNC communications director. So, Betsy, let's start with you and talk about these confirmation hearings and what Garrett and I were talking about, the dynamic in the room, right? He only needs Republican votes in order to be confirmed, but that's not a guarantee for Pete Hegseth right now. What's the strategy for Democrats here?
Well, the number one focus for everyone is going to be Joni Ernst, the Iowa Republican, who's been very restrained in the comments that she makes about Hegseth. I believe they've had at least 2 meetings. She's communicated to Trump's team that she is not a fan, that she, at least as of before the holiday break, she was not signaling whatsoever that she was on board with Hegseth. Of course, it's been a little bit. Everyone's had time for people to work on trying to move her. But where we stand right now, to my knowledge, she has not publicly said anything, signaling she's going to vote for him. And of course, she's a sexual assault survivor, something she's been very open about. The fact that Hegseth faces these allegations, even though he said they're all not true, that's something that will have a lot of weight with her. So tomorrow, it's going to be the Joni Ernst story. One more confirmation hearing people should keep an eye on for this week. This is someone who I expect won't have much trouble, but could have a pretty feisty hearing, is Russ Vought, who's nominated to run the Office of Management and Budget. That's one of the most important elements of the White House that's also very little known outside of sort of beltway nerd world. He's going to play a massive role in Elon Musk's agenda to try to cut down the government size, shave things down. He's going to face a ton of incoming from Dems and probably has a much more attention from Senate Democrats than the public might recognize.
And there are some Republicans in the appropriations world that remember their last experience with him at OMB that aren't necessarily thrilled about his nomination. So that's a good flag. Doug, let's talk from a communications perspective about the job Pete Hegseth has here tomorrow. Is this make or break for him? I mean, part of the reason that Donald Trump picked him is because he's good on television and he's good in an environment like this. Can he save his nomination during this hearing tomorrow?
Well, at this point, it doesn't necessarily need to be saved. We have a Republican majority, therefore he should be confirmed. Typically, overwhelmingly, a Democratic president with a Democratic Senate, their nominees get confirmed. Same thing with Republicans. So this would only be a break moment. He doesn't have to make anything. If he just holds his own and is polished and prepared, as I expect he would be, then despite all the incoming, it's about those 2 or 3 senators that we've talked about who are Republican, and they don't want to defy Donald Trump, especially in one of what would be one of their first votes in the Trump presidency.
Amisha, is that enough, though? Is it enough for him just to be smooth and well-spoken? Or does he have to specifically answer some of these accusations about sexual assault, about alcohol abuse, about mismanagement of these veterans organizations?
I think he absolutely has to answer those questions specifically, and he has got to answer them pointedly as well. And not just for the confirmation hearing itself, but for the millions of active duty military that he within this role will be over. Because there are individuals who, quite frankly, feel extremely uncomfortable with it because he ran 2 organizations into the ground that represented veterans, because he does not have the background, the traditional background of someone who's held this position, because he's never managed a budget or personnel the size of what he would be managing. Those are very important questions. But I do think that this is more so for the thing here is that he is going to have to persuade a very small handful of Republicans. Democrats are going to do what they can, but Democrats are largely not going to vote for him anyway. He also has to, again, get the faith of the military community, because what we saw was a lot of individuals sign on to letters calling out his nomination from the beginning who actually are decorated military leaders. And I think that that's a big deal as well. No, they're not in the confirmation room, but they are people who it's going to really matter how they feel about who is in that role.
And Betsy, I want to go back to what you were saying about Joni Ernst and the position she finds herself in. You know, the signals were that she wasn't necessarily comfortable with this appointment for a wide range of issues. She was assaulted online. The Donald Trump supporters really came after her. We're told that there's going to be a huge show of force of former Navy SEALs and other supporters of Pete Hegseth in the room. How much pressure does she have politically, particularly because she's up for re-election in this upcoming cycle?
The pressure is real, and that makes this complicated and high-stakes moment for her. Trump's team is very frustrated with her. They see her as someone who is unhelpful. She is very much on their bad side. Now, the issue, of course, for Republicans nationally is that although Iowa has become very much strongly a red state and should be a gimme for Republicans, every once in a while Democrats do better there than expected. So Republicans don't totally want to take the state for granted. That said, Joni is certainly someone who would have to worry about getting primaried. Another thing about Hegseth that's interesting, I was talking to an aide for a Senate Republican who's not thrilled with Hegseth, not jumping up and down about voting for him. And what this aide said is that when you look at sort of the basket of problematic nominees, so RFK, Tulsi, Hegseth, of those three, Hegseth is one of the hardest to vote against because their constituents know him. So many of these Republican voters have watched him on Fox News for years and years, and they like him. RFK, it's easy to go home and say, he's a Democrat, I'm not voting for a Dem. Tulsi, it's a little easier to go back and say, I'm not an Assad fan, I'm not voting for Tulsi. But with Hegseth, the people who show up at town halls, many of them are going to feel a personal connection to him. That's an asset for him coming in.
And I do want to move to disaster politics, but to that point, Doug, is there only one, maybe two more of these Republican nominees that can get killed at this point, especially after Gates has been pushed out?
Yeah, my guess is it's only one. And if you have one bullet, you have to be very careful about where you shoot it and which nominee you'd want to see falter. And I don't think, for a lot of the reasons that Betsy said, that would be Pete.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
It may be zero, by the way.
Right. All right, let's talk now about the fires in California. President-elect Trump continues to pick a fight with officials in that state. Amisha, I want to play for you some of what Governor Newsom said on Meet the Press yesterday about Trump's threats to withhold aid. Take a listen.
He's done it in Utah, he's done it in Michigan, did it in Puerto Rico. He did it to California back before I was even governor in 2018, until he found out folks in Orange County voted for him, and then he decided to give the money. I've been pretty expressive about that in the context of someone threatening our first responders in terms of supporting the immediacy of their needs.
That's what you take it as, that President-elect Trump is threatening the first responders here.
Well, I mean, it's what he said. He said, I'm not going to support the firefighting efforts. I'm not going to support the state of California as it relates to its emergency management.
You see the devastation there, Amisha. Can Donald Trump afford to continue with this sort of partisan sniping once he retakes the Oval Office?
Absolutely not. And I think that this is something that Trump is using because it bolsters excitement online from the fringes on the right. It is, when you become president of the United States, you are president of all of the states, not only the ones where you had large percentages of people who voted for you or the ones that you flipped. And for Donald Trump, this was a lesson he had to learn the hard way the first go round when he was in office the first time, because there were stalwarts there who were saying, hey, you can't do this. I'm not so sure those stalwarts exist this time around. But Donald Trump is also trying to build towards a legacy. And if he can say, I came in and fixed it where Gavin and several other Democrats just couldn't get out ahead of themselves, I think he's going to take that opportunity.
Will he, Doug?
Probably not. And look, the politics can always come later. But, you know, I've spent a lot of time in North Carolina over the holidays, in western North Carolina. That devastation is still real and long term, just as California is going to be dealing with. And they've been dealing with the same kind of politics there. I heard conspiracy theories about FEMA and so forth that have been fed on the left and on the right. The best thing that Donald Trump can do, whether it's the ongoing efforts in North Carolina or clearly as all of this is starting in California, is demonstrate competence. You do that, people will respond positively.
Okay. Thank you guys for being here. Betsy, Amisha, Doug, we appreciate it. We're going to have live special coverage of Pete Hegseth's Senate confirmation hearing starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now. I'll be in the room for it. Up next, NBC's one-on-one interview with Trump's incoming border czar, as the president-elect vows a historic mass deportation operation that could immediately begin after he takes the oath of office. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. President-elect Trump is preparing a series of executive actions related to immigration, some of which we expect him to implement as soon as he's sworn into office, 1 week from today. Incoming border czar Tom Homan sat down for a one-on-one interview with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez at the U.S. southern border. When it comes to implementing President-elect Trump's ambitious plan for mass deportations, Homan wouldn't put a price tag on the effort, but said the $86 billion number that's been floated would be a, quote, great start.
By when do you need that money in order for this to be effective?
The sooner we get the money, the more effective we're going to be. But because there's limited money right now, doesn't mean we're not going to start day one. We'll deal with it as we, we're going to start day one. The president's going to take steps to secure the border day one. We're going to start the national operation day one.
What are some of those steps on day one?
As far as, look, I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this. He's going to be announcing some things on day one. And going to be things you've seen in the past, and there's going to be some new things.
Are we talking about re-implementing Title 42?
I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to get ahead of the president on that.
Should we expect workplace raids?
Yes. I wouldn't call it a raid. They're based on investigation. But why do I say that? Number one reason, where do we find most victims of forced labor? Worksite operations. The Biden administration said they're concerned about trafficking, to include forced labor trafficking, but they stopped worksite enforcement operations. 3.5 decades, that's where we find a lot of victims of forced trafficking.
How soon should we expect the ramping up of workplace roundups?
We'll have to see.
Are we talking around Inauguration Day, even on Inauguration Day?
I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to forecast what we're doing and where we're doing it, but you can count on worksite enforcement coming back.
Do you plan to prosecute public officials who don't help you?
What I would say is, sanctuary cities don't want to help us, that's fine. I think it's wrong, but that's fine, because I would think any elected official would want to remove public safety threats from the communities. But there's a line they can't cross. Now, I've heard things saying we're going to put roadblocks up and not allow you in the city. Well, that's a clear violation of federal law. If you don't want to help us, then don't help us. We're going to do it anyways. You're not going to lock us out of your city. We're going to do this job.
Will there be collateral arrests?
Yes.
So, for example, if you go after a immigrant who has a criminal record, you find him at home, his wife is there. She does not have a criminal record. Does she get arrested?
Is she illegally in the United States?
If she's undocumented, does she get arrested too?
Yes. She'll be processed, and we'll let the immigration judge decide what happens to her. They all have a right to see an immigration judge.
Grandma, for example, does she get arrested as well?
She in the country legally?
Yes.
Then she'll be put in front of an immigration judge too. It's not okay to be in this country illegally. It's not okay to violate laws and cross that border. It's going to be based on the specifics of each case and each person we encounter.
Discretion for each ICE agent. That gives a lot of power to each ICE agent.
Yes. Shouldn't they have that power? I mean, you give an officer the ability to take a life if he has to. We should give him the discretion on does this arrest serve the mission, and does this arrest serve the nation?
Should birthright citizenship come to an end?
I'll leave that up to the president to make that decision.
But what's your opinion? Do you think it should?
I'll say this. Birthright citizenship is a major driver of illegal immigration. And that's what the whole controversy is about right now, right? If you come in the country legally, which is a crime, you get ordered, you lose your hearing, the federal judge says you must go home, or you don't show up in court and you get what they call an order in absentia, order removed, and have a U.S. citizen child. People think they should be immune. The law means nothing to you now because you knew you're in the country legally. You chose to have an illegal alien. You chose to have a U.S. citizen child, knowing you're in the country legally, knowing you were ordered deported, and you went and made that decision. That's on you.
What would you say to potentially Trump supporters, Trump voters, farmers, ranchers who employ undocumented immigrants as part of their industry? Should they be worried that their workforce is going to leave?
I would tell you, wait and see what we do with worksite enforcement before you make that judgment. There's a legal way to bring in agricultural workers in this country. If it needs to be expanded, if the Department of Labor can say that we don't have the workforce to do it, then it's up to Congress to make a fix. But right now, we're going to force the law as is.
Will mass deportation hurt the economy?
I think mass deportation and results of mass deportation are more important to this country than anything. I don't put a price on Laken Riley's life. I don't put a price on all these young women who have been raped and murdered. I don't put a price on our national security. What price do you put on national security? So I think the national security of this nation, we can't afford another 9/11. We can't keep affording American citizens dying at the hands of illegal aliens.
You have mentioned that there could be a hotline for people to call in to report undocumented immigrants in their communities.
It's one thing we're considering, yeah.
One thing you're considering. What would that look like?
That's what, we're working on it now. What makes sense? That's still a fresh idea, working on it. But I want a place where American citizens can call and report. We need to make sure they have an outlet to help report child traffickers, forced labor traffickers. We want to give them an opportunity to be a part of the fix.
Do you plan to separate families?
Families, I've said it before. Families can be, if a family needs to be deported, if members of the family needs to be deported, then that parent needs to make a decision. Again, having your citizen child shouldn't be an amnesty card. They put themselves in that position. So if there's an illegal alien parent wants to be, it's going to be deported, he has a U.S. citizen child, then he needs to make the decision as a parent. You put yourself in that position, so you can be a parent, the child go with you to your homeland, or the child can stay with a relative or another spouse. But again, I am not putting myself in that position. The president they put themselves in that position. Having a U.S. citizen child does not give you immunity from this nation's laws.
And joining me now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, terrific work on this interview. Does ICE have enough money to go through with its mass deportation plan?
Hi there, Ryan. Not even close. As we've reported, according to two U.S. officials familiar with the figure, ICE is already dealing with a $230 million budget shortfall. And just a few weeks ago, Ryan, we saw firsthand near Baltimore ICE agents tracking down these targeted enforcement operations, and more than a dozen agents were required to just arrest 5 people. So you can imagine how many resources will be necessary. We spoke with Tom Homan for quite a bit. Donald Trump has called him straight out of central casting. He's the former acting ICE director during the first Trump administration, former ICE agent himself. And he also talked about a sort of expansionist foreign policy. He also mentioned to us, Ryan, that the incoming administration plans to shut down the Darien Gap. That's that 70-mile stretch of jungle in Panama that so many migrants cross en route to the U.S. Certainly, all around, a very ambitious agenda when it comes to immigration, Ryan.
He may be one of the most important people in the incoming Trump administration, and Gabe Gutierrez asked him the tough questions. Gabe, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. After the break, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that negotiators are closer than they've ever been to reaching a ceasefire and hostage deals in Gaza as the Biden administration rushes to get an agreement across the finish line in its final days. We'll have the very latest on the Middle East and the latest remarks from the president next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Just 1 week left in office, and President Biden is laying out what he hopes his legacy will look like. Today, he gave his final foreign policy speech. Speaking at the State Department, President Biden touted what he sees as the successes of his administration, from strengthening NATO to weakening Iran and standing up to China.
It's clear. My administration is leaving the next administration with a very strong hand to play. And we're leaving them in America with more friends and stronger alliances, whose adversaries are weaker and under pressure. An America that once again is leading, uniting countries, setting the agenda, bringing others together behind our plans and visions.
Biden also discussed the ongoing efforts to broker a ceasefire and hostage deal in the Middle East before leaving office. Two U.S. officials familiar with the negotiations tell NBC News today that deal could be just days away. And Secretary of State Blinken told NBC's Andrea Mitchell today that, quote, we are closer than we have ever been to a deal. Joining me now is Richard Haass, who's the president emeritus at the Council on Foreign Relations. Richard, thanks for being here. I mean, what was your big takeaway from what you heard from President Biden today?
Well, not surprisingly, he's fighting for his legacy. All presidents do it, particularly one-term presidents. And I think, he's emphasizing the strength of American alliances. Essentially, we went from an America first to an alliance first foreign policy under Joe Biden. And Ukraine was at the centerpiece of it. And he wants people to essentially focus on that and not on not on other areas, which obviously were less successful.
And we know Joe Biden, the senator and the vice president, he often touted his foreign policy experience. What do you think his foreign policy legacy as president will be?
It'll be decidedly mixed. The Ukraine situation, for example, is very much in the hands of his successor. I think the administration made some mistakes in their over-carefulness about what they provide Ukraine. Even more, not setting war aims that could be realized, that could be met. So as a result, he's kicking it to his successor. Middle East, been criticized for not having done enough to influence Israeli policy, though the region as a whole, I'd say things have improved more because of what Israel's done and weakening Hezbollah, weakening Iran, obviously the change in Syria. So again, it's an incomplete record. I think the biggest weaknesses will be things like Afghanistan, which was actually a bipartisan failure since the Trump administration signed the pact, the Biden administration implemented it. And if you count it as a national security issue, the border, by allowing that to get so open, 8 million or so people coming in illegally, obviously that will be a major cloud on the Biden record.
You mentioned that a lot of this will be in the hands now of President-elect Trump. He's going to be the one grappling with these foreign policy challenges. He also ran a campaign that was decidedly opposite the Joe Biden foreign policy in many respects. As you point out, much more America first than alliance first. What do you expect his foreign policy agenda will look like, and how will partners and allies be preparing for that?
You know, it was Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York, who once said, you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. So it's one thing for Donald Trump as a candidate to lay out pretty absolute positions. In government, he's going to be faced with certain realities. He's already taking a more sober position on Ukraine, realizing it's going to take quite a lot of time to influence Vladimir Putin's calculations. He seems, even though he's threatening tariffs, he also is making certain outreach to China. It's our most important bilateral relationship. So, what we're getting, I think, is a difference between Donald Trump, the campaigner and the candidate, and Donald Trump, the 47th president. And then we're just going to have to see. It's going to depend upon him. It's going to depend on events. His team is not in place. We'll have to see what the chemistry is in the new national security team.
And Trump said last week that he is attempting and trying to set up a meeting with Vladimir Putin. What do you make of his apparent eagerness to get that meeting set up?
Look, I don't see anything wrong with it per se. I never thought diplomacy was a favor we do for anybody. We've got an enormous agenda with Russia, not just Ukraine. A year after Mr. Trump takes office, all the nuclear arms control agreements with Russia and the most important ones expire. There's a big report that just came out an hour or two ago in the New York Times that Russia was placing explosive devices on airplanes in the West to inflict pain on us in retaliation for our support of Ukraine. So we've got enormous issues with Russia. Supposedly this week, Russia's going to sign a new agreement with Iran. Needless to say, we don't want that. We don't want them transferring nuclear technology to either Iran or North Korea. So we've got a big relationship, a difficult one. It's in some ways our worst relationship. So I'm not against, in principle, Mr. Trump talking to Mr. Putin. It all depends then on the results.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's a situation in the Middle East, which you've already touched on. But we do have reporting that U.S. officials believe a ceasefire and a hostage deal in Gaza could be days away unless Hamas reneges. How likely is it that Biden could get a deal over the finish line? He has 7 days left before Donald Trump takes office. Is this possible?
Sure, it's possible. The stars are aligned. I hope it happens. I would love for those hostages to get home. I'd love there to be a ceasefire. But even if that were to happen, let's not kid ourselves. That's not peace in Gaza. It's not peace in the Middle East. Enormous questions remain. So this is, I don't know if it's the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end. It'd be progress. But what remains to be done is far greater than a deal, even if we get one.
And how do you expect Donald Trump to follow through on that if a deal were to be hatched here in the last couple of days? Because it would really be his responsibility to make sure it's implemented.
Oh, absolutely. And the real question is, can you get some type of security force into Gaza? Can you get a political dialogue going between Israel and Palestinians? Mr. Trump is going to have enormous decisions to make about that, also about how to deal with a weakened Iran. So, again, Mr. Biden is going to leave, shall we say, a rather full inbox for his successor, and exactly how Donald Trump's going to deal with everything that's going to be waiting for him. That essentially is the next chapter of history.
Yeah, new administration, new challenges in a very volatile world right now. Richard Haass, thank you for breaking down all of it for us. We appreciate it. Up next, more on the devastating California wildfires as President Biden is set to hold a White House meeting on the federal response minutes from now. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. President Biden is scheduled to convene a meeting at the White House in just a few minutes to discuss the latest federal efforts to respond to the wildfires in Los Angeles. It comes as residents in the L.A. area are looking for every resource possible amid this crisis, which includes many Angelenos turning to a free app called Watch Duty. It's been downloaded millions of times since the fires began, giving users real-time updates on nearby wildfires, evacuation warnings, air quality alerts, wind direction, and more. The app pulls together a number of official sources, from live video feeds to police radio, and is powered by a team of mostly volunteers, many of whom are current or retired firefighters and emergency dispatchers. Some L.A. residents are calling the app a lifeline amid the rapidly changing conditions, coming as trust in the country's alert system has been impacted by instances of false evacuation alerts. And joining me now is John Mills, who is the CEO of Watch Duty. John, this is a fascinating story. Tell us about how the app Watch Duty works.
So as you alluded to in your prelude there, we take a lot of the public sources that are available, like maps and satellite hotspots and things that you can find all over the internet. But what's really interesting is the information that comes from first responders from talking to each other on the radios. So we have about a dozen or more people at any given time, at this time probably 24, listening to them fight the fire. So we hear what they're doing on the fire ground.
And how does this help people that are impacted by the wildfires? What do they get out of this?
I mean, you get a lot of granular insight, right? So like the government is putting out information, but their process is a little bit cumbersome and slow. And when you have a fast moving disaster like this, you need a lot more than the twice daily update. And that's why this is relevant.
And how is it that you guys are able to go through all of this information that's coming in and pick through all of this different detail to pull out the things that would be relevant and useful for your users?
I mean, that is a very interesting question. I mean, I went through a couple fires myself, which is why I started this service. But what helped me when I was going through devastation was a bunch of these human beings who were radio dispatchers feeding information to their community. So I've experienced this firsthand, and it's really all their hard work. It was me putting them together in a community to put their voices as one big voice and do something really big. And that's how this all happened.
And there are so many sources of information out there right now on the wildfires. Why do you think so many people are specifically reaching for Watch Duty?
I mean, we really tune this to the human experience that you're going through. If you've never gone through a disaster like this, you don't know how to solve this problem. Emergency managers and whatnot have a lot of intelligence that we don't have, but they're on the inside, not on the outside. So if you look at this from the bottom up, from the citizens up, what is it like to evacuate? What is it like to get an alert? What does that mean? Where do I go? A lot of these WIAs that have gone out just say fire. They don't say fire moving northwest from this street to that street at 25 miles an hour. And if you get a whole story, you're able to prepare better. And I know which way to leave my driveway, east or west.
Mm-hmm. And can you maybe share an anecdote from people that have told you about their experience using the app during these wildfires?
I mean, that's a hard one, honestly. We're just kind of running day to day here. I mean, we get love letters, written notes, checks. We have tanker pilots, dozer operators, emergency managers use it. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. This is beyond what we ever imagined.
Well, maybe expand upon the example that you just gave. I'm in my house. There's an evacuation order. I'm scared to death, but I don't even know which way to drive. Is that something that your app can help tell me and guide me the right way to get out of town?
You got it. And I've been through that situation myself. And so it's challenging looking at these zone numbers saying zone F4D7, you've got the magic ticket to leave. But if you look at Watch Duty, you can see your little blue dot where your GPS is, and then you can see what color your zone is. And so you can quickly figure out where you are. And then if you look broader, you can say, oh, the fire is in this direction. I turn the wind layer on, the wind's going that way. And so as long as you can follow that story, it's a lot easier to just grok and comprehend this when, cognitive decline happens when you're panicked.
Mm-hmm. And just talk to me about some of the challenges that your staff has faced. We only have about 30 seconds. I mean, it has to be so taxing on everyone.
Yeah, it's not our first rodeo, but this is the most devastating thing we have come across. And so our team are sleeping in shifts. We're door dashing them food. We're doing whatever we can to relieve each other day and night and make this happen. And everyone is holding up, and we are not done yet. So we're not going to stop.
Well, John, you are literally a lifeline for millions of people in your area that are dealing with just absolute devastation. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And we're back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now, but the news continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.